have an idea for a film, starring me, as me, but hotter and more successful. The writing guides all say I should write consistent and likeable characters, a healthy romance, and a magic system with solid foundations. But that sounds like a lot of effort, and to be honest, I just want to write about people telling me, I mean the main character, how hot she is. Oh, cards of wisdom. Should I follow my heart and write a lazy, cliched, self-insert story with more focus on relationships and the plot? How about best 2 out of 3? Handbook for Mortals by Lani Sarem is a YA fantasy about Zaid, an illusionist who joins the famed magician Charles Spellman and his crew of performers. But little do they know that she doesn't perform stage magic, but real magic. The book was published by Geek Nation, an online hub for lovers of all things geeky, and definitely not a publishing house, who I only think took on the project because it was meant to be made into a film, but then didn't get made into a film, and they don't seem to have published anything since. Weirdly enough, the story behind the story is actually more interesting than the story itself. So, who is Lani Sarem? Lani Sarem started out with dreams of stardom, but struggled to land any major or even minor roles on TV or film, and instead found herself stuck as bit parts or uncredited roles. She worked in Vegas for a while and even managed a couple of bands, and then began writing Handbook for Mortals in 2010 when it was initially a screenplay, shortly after her fiancé broke up with her. In an interview, she said, "When I started writing, I really wanted all the things that I couldn't have at that moment. I wanted somebody's love story to work out. I wanted this character to have all the things I was lacking and then live vicariously through her." So there is no question of Zaid acting as a stand-in for Lani. There are various controversies surrounding Handbook for Mortals. The biggest of these is, of course, the book making it onto the New York Times bestsellers list. It was claimed that the book had sold 18,000 copies at the end of its first week, which would have been absolutely phenomenal if it was in the least bit true. In reality, she or someone working with her bought copies in bulk from bookshops, which she said was in order to reflect the sales that she had made at conventions. She also claimed to have been selling an average of 2,000 copies per convention, which is curious because other more famous authors like Neil Gaiman and George R.R. Martin would sell only about maybe 500 at a convention on a good day. She is also associated with Result Source, a company known for pulling exactly these sort of stunts as part of their author campaign services. And therefore, 23 hours after making it to the NYT bestsellers list, Handbook for Mortals was booted off. There is also the controversy surrounding the front cover. Lani claims it was drawn by Ryan Kincaid and that the details, including Zaid's pose and outfit, were thought up by Lani herself. And yet, somehow it bears a striking resemblance to this piece of artwork, The Knife Thrower by Gil Delmace. Ryan did eventually apologise for not crediting Delmace, admitting he knew it was meant to be an homage to the artist, and yet somehow neither Delmace nor her agent were ever approached by anyone involved with the book for either permission or to give acknowledgement. So that's pretty suspect. And then there's all this talk of a film. Handbook was originally meant to be a film, but she turned her screenplay into a book using 3 editors, although only one is listed in the acknowledgements. She promised Thomas Ian Nichols and Carrot Top roles in the film, which spurned the former to help her get the film made. Unfortunately, no such film was ever made and likely never will be, unless she pulls a Gloria Tetch and makes the film herself.
This firewall is only an illusion.
I suppose the idea of an actual magic person pretending to be an illusionist is quite cool and a goldmine for comedic setups. So this could have been a really stellar setup if only the execution had been halfway competent. So I literally had a notebook and wrote down issues as I saw them. I didn't go through it with a fine-tooth comb because I didn't want to, but here is a selection of issues, a smorgasbord of sins, if you will. Number 1. This book has a foreword by Lani's friend, Skye Turner, who is an international best-selling author of predominantly sexy romance books. In the foreword, she spends a paragraph telling us how to pronounce Lani's name, Annie with an L, and how she wasn't sure how to pronounce Lani's name at first, and then learned how to, so that's great. She then describes in detail their friendship and how they met through a Twilight fan club, and how she started writing her own books, before finally meandering to Lani's book and gushing about how amazing it is. This is the worst foreword I've ever read in my life. Number 2. There are random quotes at the beginning of this book from other authors, including Stephanie Meyer, whose name is spelt wrong. Number 3. The use of tarot cards is a little odd. The chapter titles are all named after tarot cards, which I wouldn't have minded if the chapters had anything to do with the tarot cards, or if tarot had featured more prominently, but it doesn't. It's Lani's mother's profession, but she leaves the mum in the first chapter, so... Number 4, there is no plot. It is just a series of things happening, and I'm extremely generous with that description. Number 5, there are strong, not like other girl vibes. This includes the whole, we can't have an unattractive main character, but she can't acknowledge her attractiveness because that's so vain, so better make her oblivious to her own beauty. Despite this, she has moments of acknowledging her hotness, and in the first chapter she wishes someone could take a picture of her in a particular moment because she thinks she looks cool. Number 6, the way religion and biblical history is talked about is wrong. She claims that tarot goes back to Judaism. No, tarot cards began as a game called tarocchi in medieval Italy. The earliest decks, the Visconti Sforza decks, date to the 15th century, and the cards didn't carry connotations with the occult or prophecy until the 18th century. People have tried to link it to Kabbalah, a form of Jewish mysticism, supposedly because there are 22 trumps and 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet, but more likely it's because the languages like Hebrew are seen as magical by some. So it's nonsense. She also says a lot of nonsense about like the Bible endorsing soothsaying, despite the mountain of verses explicitly saying otherwise. Number 7, apparently dyslexia makes you write backwards. I think she meant sometimes kids with dyslexia write individual letters in reverse. Instead, Zaid wrote school notes like Da Vinci's diary. Number 8, the arguments between characters are so dramatic and yet have no impact because we don't really know or care about any of them, so it just reads as the angsty fanfiction I wrote when I was 13. Number 9, why does this story keep stopping for blocks of song lyrics? Number 10, the description of setting and physical space is awful. I don't know what anything looks like or where anyone is, and so it's a struggle to follow characters and action because I can't picture anything. Number 11, the description of characters exists, but is limited to their hair and eye colour, clothes, and level of attractiveness. Spoiler alert, nearly everyone is incredibly attractive. Number 12, Zaid auditions for Charles Spellman's magic show. The audition was weird and I had a very hard time understanding what was going on. Needless to say, it did not read like a real audition. Number 13, the depiction of female characters is troublesome. We only have a handful. Sophia, who is the stereotypical mean girl who hates Zaid for no reason. There's Mel, who is Sophia's lackey. Both are very attractive. Dela, or Della, Zaid's mum, who is incredibly attractive, and only shows up at the end. Lil, who is a costumier and a goth, who is very attractive and tells Zaid how amazing she is and wants Zaid to do her hair for her. There are also the random girls who are talking about clothes and shopping, and Zaid struggles to fit in with them because they're just so basic and she's just so complicated. And then there's the Lemonade guy's girlfriend who has a go at Zaid for being attractive to her boyfriend, but Zaid gets her own back by dousing the girl in lemonade because comedy. Number 14, every single man in this is super handsome. Why is everyone so attractive in this book? Number 15, Sarem keeps randomly giving Zaid various hobbies and skills whenever she feels like it. Suddenly, she can play guitar and has always played guitar. It just wasn't important until she needed to sing a song outside at night while soaking wet because she just saved someone from drowning. Oh, and she's so amazing at singing that someone from her band heard her once and asked her to sing with him one day. Oh, and she likes motorbikes and has always liked motorbikes and has several motorbikes and brought a motorbike with her to Vegas, even though she went to Vegas in a car and never mentioned going back for a motorbike or having a motorbike transported, so... And then there's the random necklace she has that's really super important to her. That isn't mentioned till the end of the book. Number 16, the magic system is woefully unexplored. You have no feel for the magic, no connection between it and Zaid, which makes it very boring to read about. No rules are established until they're needed, and even then they're not explained particularly well. There are no stakes established until they're needed, and again, not explained. There's also this psychic ability that turns up once or twice, and again, not explained, and it is also apparently separate from the magic. Number 17. This book has the words telling instead of showing problem I have seen in some time. The phrases I would find out or they would turn out to be and similar occur far too often. Instead of telling us what she would find out, why not show us her finding it out? Also, I can't believe I'm saying this, you shouldn't need to tell us what characters' personalities are. And yet Sarem does. Probably because the characters are so bland, they make Anastasia Steele seem interesting. Number 18. There are attempts at humour that are terrible in two ways. Firstly, none of the jokes are funny. Secondly, she keeps explaining them to us like we're idiots. Number 19. This book contains the phrase, my eyelids blinking, which is the stupidest thing I've ever read. Number 20. There is so much pointlessness in this book. Random tangents and scenes that go nowhere. Characters turn up and are given names and nicknames that never appear again. Unimportant bits are either repeated or explained in excruciating detail. Yes, I know what the 1001 Nights are. And no, the 1001 Nights are not from the Arabian Nights. They're the same thing, you pillock. If you're going to waste my time, at least get your facts straight. But then again, fact-checking is obviously not Lani's strong point. Number 21. Zayd is 25 years old, but that's like a teenager. 22. The feminist agenda, when it remembers to have one, is painful. Zayd refuses help with putting up her tent when they go camping because, as a fiercely independent woman, she can only accept help from a boyfriend. She would also quite like a boyfriend because it would be nice to have someone to do things with. It's not like you could do things with your friends, you know, like go camping. Number 23. The feminist gender is also weakened when you pit girls against girls over a boy. It's petty and stupid. Number 24. The romance is idiotic. Because the characters are inconsistent personality-wise, the romance is difficult to follow or believe. The two guys pursuing Zayd, Mac and Jackson, are dull. Jackson likes Zayd straight away and constantly flirts. Mac doesn't because the author keeps mistaking tension for chemistry. She also mistakes being cruel, obnoxious, possessive, jealous, petty and rude for being romantic. When Mac finds out what Zayd's mum does for a living, he reacts in somewhat a concerning way, not unlike a petulant child, and actually makes her cry. Yet he's the one she's going to end up with. Number 25. The love triangle is stupid and badly executed. It's not the easiest trope to pull off, as it does have a tendency of drowning any plot and making the main character seem callous and vain. But this one's particularly bad because she just doesn't really have any emotion about it. She just thinks about both guys being hot and doing date things with them and just expecting the other to be okay with this. I mean, she isn't exclusive with either of them, but it just makes it seem very uncaring. Number 26. Mac has a rule against dating performers because someone once broke his heart and she happened to be a performer. But her being a performer had nothing to do with it. So, what? Number 27. The employee dining room is cleverly referred to as the EDR. This is not clever. Number 28. Jackson is a fictitious member of the not fictitious band The Play Might Tease. Why? Number 29. Grammar and typos abound. Repeated sentences, inconsistencies and continuity errors. Generally, is not well written or edited. Number 30. The first kiss between Zayd and Mac is really creepy because she kind of wants to pull it away and he forces his tongue into her mouth and it's just gross. Number 31. Name dropping. Number 32. The only exciting thing that happens is a random woman attacking Zayd with magic and establishing she knows Zayd has magic. She then sods off for the rest of the book and Zayd barely thinks about her until the teaser for the sequel, which is never published. Number 33. There are random sections from Mac's point of view, which seem to serve no purpose other than as an excuse for Mac to think about how beautiful and amazing Zayd is. Number 34. This is a quote from page 120. Zayd walked by on her way to the main stage, moving too quickly to notice the group of men who had all stopped to stare at her. Drew had walked over to where Mac was standing, fiddling with Sophia's mic by turning it off and on and shaking it, trying to get some sort of reaction from it. God, that girl is beautiful. It's beyond that. There is something unique and special about her. And no, Drew never appears again. Number 35. The word jerkface is used as an insult by an adult who is drunk and angry. No. Number 36. Charles Spellman, the main illusionist, doesn't attend rehearsals. Instead, another illusionist called Zeb stands in for him, and because Zeb is standing in for Charles, someone called Rene has to stand in for Zeb. Why? Especially as they are rehearsing for a new show that is apparently so amazing to get a red carpet and press on the opening night. Shouldn't the main attraction be turning up for the rehearsals? Then again, he's also sort of their manager, so it kind of is like the ringmaster at a circus also being a clown. Number 37. During a dinner for the entire crew, Matt gets all huffy because he isn't allowed to sit next to Zayd. She, concerned that he's in a bad mood, wants to text him, so she texts him a sad face. He replies, with a grumpy face. The emotional intelligence is astounding. Number 38, they do the whole cliche of Max seeing Zaid and Charles together and mistaking it for a romantic moment when it wasn't, and thinks that Zaid is sleeping with Charles to get special treatment, even though Sophia is sleeping with Charles and doesn't get special treatment. Mac gets huffy, assumes the word without talking to her, and legitimately endangers her life by not performing the safety checks properly because he's angry. And we're meant to root for this relationship? Number 39, the illusion that Zaid has been working on for the new show, that's super dangerous and everything, is nothing but artsy-fartsy nonsense. It's also the worst example of the disconnect between Zaid and the magic. You get absolutely no feeling for the magic at all, no whimsy or wonder or awe, just the audience sees this, my head hurts. That's the whole section. Number 40, after the illusion, Zaid faints and doesn't wake up until near the end. Instead of resuming the action, where she wakes up and having a character tell her what happened, or better yet, switching to Mac's perspective, you know, the other POV character, Zaid tells us she pulled the memories of the next few days from other people's heads after she woke up and pieced them all together to tell us what happened next, which is weird. And so she then describes the action from their perspective, but still from her point of view, which is really odd to read and lacking intention, because while the other characters are being all dramatic and worried she's going to die, the reader knows she's fine, because she's already told us she wakes up in order to see these memories. Number 41, spoiler alert, Charles is Zaid's dad, and no, there are no hints whatsoever that he is, or even that she's ever wondered who her dad is. In fact, she's known all along, and yet, despite being in her head for most of the book, this just wasn't brought up. Ever. It's just a cheap twist for shock, and to give Mac an excuse to not have a proper conversation with Zaid about him seeing her and Charles and jumping to the wrong conclusion. Number 42, Mac asks Della, Zaid's mother, why Zaid is unconscious and bleeding and all that after the artsy-fartsy finale. This kickstarts an explanation as to how Zaid's father met her mother and how they fell in love and why they split up. What has this got to do with anything? Your daughter is dying, woman! Number 43. There is a flashback to Zaid's parents' meeting, which consisted solely of unfunny banter, being attractive, and Charles staring at Dealer's boobies. Number 44. The way they saved Zaid was by having Max stab her with a dagger that wasn't a dagger and chanting in Bosnian. It was weird. Number 45. What sort of church rings its bells at 3 a.m? Number 46. Zaid mentions that taking memories without permission is very difficult. She wants to learn how to take memories without permission. That is creepy. Number 47. The love triangle is still not resolved at the end. Like, she's still stringing both of them along, even though she's clearly more into Mac. Just let Jackson go and find someone who'll give him their full attention instead of just the scraps you're giving him. Number 48. The last line is literally, and they lived happily ever after, ... Or do they? Number 49. This is followed by a teaser for the next book, which literally begins where this left off. It implies that Zaid will gain another love interest, because that's what we need. More people to fawn over Zaid and how attractive she is. Number 50. Sarem's acknowledgments are ridiculously long. I counted, and she thanks 186 people by name or relation, including Eddie Izzard, C.S. Lewis, Stephanie Meyer, still spelling her name wrong by the way, and God. She also thanks the unnamed crew members of various places and companies, 4 bands, and the town of Bluebell. This book is also dedicated to the memories of 15 people. I think she only mentioned most of these people to guilt them into buying a copy. This is a very strange book, enticing people with promises of magic and mystery, and instead serving a platter of lazy romance and attractive people. This feels like Lani wrote this picturing the film, and I wonder if the reason she name-dropped so many celebrities was to entice them to joining said film. Steven Spielberg directing, Ryan Reynolds starring, Amy Mann in the plain white tees doing the soundtrack, and with cameos of course by Carrot Top and Wayne Newton. Fortunately, she hasn't tried to make this into a film herself, a la Gloria Tesh's Maradona disaster. This is just a bad book. It's vapid nonsense and not worth reading, except perhaps for the sheer ridiculousness of it. And that's it. That's all I have to say about it, so Yeah. Goodbye.